Letter G goes on to say, let's go back to the calculator and add this in so we can check ourselves. We'll do that. I did want to point out this note that's written here at the bottom. This will be important for you when you do your homework. These problems are tricky because different students may pick a different pair of points to work with. And in my math lab, there will be times where they just tell you which 2 points to use. But other times, knowing that it's your choice, the way that they deal with that is they give the answers in a multiple choice format. So what you would do is you'd go ahead and work the problem, you'd end up with an equation, and then from the choices that you see, you should pick the one that's the closest to what you found. And then after you do that, just use their equation for the rest of the problem. All right, so let's get this typed into the calculator. All right, so here's the calculator. Our scattergram is still on the screen. If I want to type the equation in, I would go to the y equals button. Now I'm going to leave that plot on. I want to see if this line really does a good job of going through that data. In the y equals line, I'll type my equation in. Now I have to use x and y here in the calculator, so that would be 0.74x plus 18.3. And then I know I'm already looking at a good window, so I don't want to change any of that. I'm just going to go ahead and hit graph to take me back to that screen. And sure enough, the line that we obtained, you can see how it goes through the first and the fifth points, just like we had planned. It comes pretty close to all of the points, and so this makes us feel like we did our algebra correctly. Now, if you look at part H on the handout, there is another way suggested that you could use to check your algebra work, and that is called finding the linear regression equation. This is a statistics idea, and the linear regression equation is considered to be the best line, the perfect line that fits the data, even though it may not go through any of the points. You've got the steps there on your handout for how to get that line. The way you do it is you go back to the Stat button, and then this time, don't hit Enter here. Use the arrow to go over to the Calc menu, and then from the Calc menu, either arrow down to choice 4, or just choose the 4. That stands for linear regression. You need to make sure that these lists say L1 and L2. That's where our data is. If for some reason they don't match, you can change them. Do you see in blue you have L1 here, you have L2 here? You would just need to hit the blue button to fix that. Hopefully yours is fine. And then I believe you just have to hit Enter to get yourself down to the word calculate and hit Enter one last time. And the information then that comes up, they are telling you A here in the calculator stands for the slope value and B stands for the y-intercept value. Back to the handout, we're asked in letter H to go ahead and write down the equation of that regression line that we just found, rounding the values to 2 decimal places and using the correct variables. If you look back at your calculator, that means we'll round the slope off to 0.69 and the y-intercept to 20.03. Our variables in this problem are p and t, so that's going to give us p equals 0.69t plus 20.03. The point simply is that if you compare that equation to the one we found earlier, of course it's not exactly the same, but the values are close. 0.74 is pretty close to 0.69. 18.3 is pretty close to 20.03, and that also gives us some confidence that we did our work correctly. We're not going to make a big deal about the regression equation. I'm just showing it to you as another way you can help check your algebraic work. Finally, that takes us to letter I. Now that we have our equation, we can use it to answer all sorts of questions. This particular question says, let's use the equation to predict when half of births will occur outside of marriage. Well, these questions, generally either they're going to give you a T and ask you for a P, or they're going to give you a P and ask you for a T. Which is it here? Well, one of the key words to me is the word when, because that lets me know I'm looking for a time. They're not giving me a time, I'm looking for the time. Well, that means they better give me a percentage. And of course, if you scan through here, you don't see a percentage, but it's there, it's buried a little bit. It's in this phrase right here, half of births. You just have to think, okay, half, what is that as a percentage? And that is, of course, 50%. How would you work this problem out? Well, you would simply go to your equation. You would plug in 50 where you see the P, and then you would solve the resulting equation for T. In other words, you would take the equation that we had found earlier, you would take 50, place it here in the P position, do a little bit of algebra to figure out the T, and that's how you would answer the question. Now remember, if they actually wanted a year, you would have to think about the fact that T stands for how many years it's been since the year 1980. For example, if you ended up with something like T equals 43, that would mean 43 years since 1980, in other words, the year 2023. Don't forget to turn off the plot on your calculator if you're going to be doing some other types of graphing.